Today on the What's Up Solar podcast, Jacob Lundy, a 10-year marketing veteran who has worked in numerous climate tech startups and managed clients across EPCs, engineers, consultants, and more. He recognizes a critical gap. Clean energy companies with groundbreaking technologies, products, and services were struggling to effectively communicate their value and their actual reach for the right prospects. Jacob created Marketergy to ensure these companies leverage the right cost-effective marketing strategies to increase their ROI. He's been featured on Clean Power Hour, Energy Tech Media, and has saved clean energy businesses over $5 million in advertising spend. Stay tuned for our interview with Jacob Lundy of Marketergy. Hey everybody, this is Emmitt with What's Up Solar Podcast, and I'm here to ask you, what's up? Enjoy the day. You remember this, the sun never sends a bill. So with solar, you can be bill less or bill light with the energy from the sun. You know, it's important for me to understand that I need to bring in my friends. I need to bring in my friends because they have some pertinent information, not only for business, but for personal as well. One of my friends is Jacob Lundy. Jacob and I worked together at a startup venture where he did marketing, and now he's venturing into marketing on his own. What's up?
Hey, Emmett. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate being on your show.
We spent a little time together, and then you moved into your own foray into the marketing space. You market to developers, EPCs, engineers, OEMs. They all have I would suspect they all have a different strategy. How does that differ across those various spaces?
Yeah, when you think at the front end of the project life cycle, with the exception of financiers and investors, when we're looking at developers, they really are focused on reaching, if they're on the C&I side, they're trying to reach C&I prospects. So that would be like B2B marketing, and that'll play a little bit bigger emphasis on some of the other pieces of the project lifecycle for EPCs, engineers, consultants as you get further away. But looking at developers, they also focus heavily on community sentiment. So if you're not familiar with community sentiment, that's essentially just like you want to build a solar farm and you have a local community and they're like, we don't like this. We're not a
Yeah.
big fan. So you might hear that in tandem with not in my backyard, NIMBYism. But essentially, a developer, they're trying to proactively get in front of the community and say, okay, this is why we want to build this. We want you to be invested in what we're invested in. And so their strategy is focused on both B2B and B2C. It also could play a bit to like if you're a community solar developer and you're trying to get community solar subscribers. Let's say you're in the Midwest and you're trying to get subscribers in your area locally to people who don't have access to community. They don't have access to solar, and so they go through a community solar program, maybe an apartment complex or something like that.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to reach those people as well. And so what it comes down to is not only strategy, but platform. So for a developer, if they're trying to reach C&I prospects like manufacturing facilities, they're doing B2B, there's a huge emphasis and opportunity on LinkedIn. But if you're trying to reach local communities and you're trying to get people to buy in from solar, it's actually a very similar platform strategy to like residential solar, where you're trying to get residential solar leads, because there's just a bigger opportunity to reach people on platforms like Meta and Google as well and get in front of them top of mind.
I have to ask this question.
Yeah.
How is TikTok coming into the fold for marketing and business?
TikTok is unique because it has a strong like consumer level, but I think it's very similar to like Reddit, where like there's a lot of consumer level things happening, but there's also use cases even for solar. You can find solar threads, and it's probably more heavily on the residential solar side.
Yeah.
But I think a great example is like I know a guy who's a strong LinkedIn influencer, and he tested Reddit ads and he found out he could find these niche threads on LinkedIn for marketers who want to use his tool. And so really, when you think about anything outside the scope of like the core social platforms we think of normally, like Meta, Google, and LinkedIn are usually my big three. There's nothing wrong with testing it because ultimately, until you test it, you're not going to really know. And that's the beauty of having somebody either in-house or an extension agency. Is like you need somebody to actually be boots in the ground for you to get the results you're looking for through marketing.
Yeah, you did I saw a beautiful interview with you referencing the B2B LinkedIn strategies and I don't know if it went to B2C, but that really piqued my interest and gave me kind of uh, a shift in perspective when dealing with business because it seems like LinkedIn is the only social media platform that is geared towards business. Is there any other avenue like that?
Yes, so there's other tools, we'll call them ABM tools, and that just stands for account-based marketing to anyone listening that might not know the term there. But those tools, they do a similar concept. And so why it's so valuable in clean energy is like when you think of developers, like you're only going to have a few hundred to a few thousand.
Yeah.
It's not like selling to millions of people. It's so different. And so you can reach those people on platforms like Triblio, demand based, Sixth Sense, those type of things. But they often follow a model that's like so minute that if you're not like an advanced marketer, you might just overlook. You know, if you're a business owner or even you have your own marketing team, and they'll charge you usually for the ad view. And so when you think about like if you're trying to take $100,000 and you're a solar EPC and you're trying to reach developers, like, do you want to spend $100,000 on a platform that charges you only when they see the ad, or do you want one that's only going to charge you when they actually do something that's meaningful, like clicks on your ad, goes to
Yeah.
your website, things like that? And so that's why the beauty of LinkedIn is so powerful, is because there's just really powerful hacks to just reduce that like overhead costs. And if you do spend 100 grand, you're probably going to get 100 grand's worth of real value instead of looking at your spreadsheet and talking to your CFO and being like, I don't really know what we accomplished. And they're going to be like, okay, it's time to 86 that idea.
So in some of the other social media platforms, as far as marketing, because we are heavily marketed to today. Wherever we go, we're marketed. As soon as you open your phone, if I play a game, I'm marketed to for another game.
Yeah.
Recently, LinkedIn introduced, or I noticed recently, LinkedIn introduced Reels. Is that a game changer?
Yeah, so you can see now on LinkedIn that you can get like a carousel feed of these like reels, essentially mimicking Instagram. More recently, they also expanded to they used to have limitations on like the square format or the
Yeah,
reel format or the wide format, and they would only be displayed on certain platforms.
yeah.
So the reel format was only on mobile up until maybe I don't know, maybe a month ago. And that might be why you're seeing an uptick on that platform. The beauty there is like you can take video content that's relevant and you can publish it in the format that's relevant, that's Reels. And then the best stuff you got out there, that's where you push and up the ante with LinkedIn ads because you already know there's a lot of traction. So if you're trying to be a thought leader as an EPC reaching developers again, you push the content organically, and then the stuff that's really working, that's where you double down. You go to LinkedIn ads, you do the company targeting, and that's hopefully where you get the most traction.
Now AI is coming in. There's Claude, there's Chat GPT, and now Gemini 2.5 Pro. And if I'm in the future, I'm dating myself. How is this impacting messaging from developers and EPCs in this industry?
Yeah, so it really comes down to like power of demand, at least from a marketer's perspective, from my perspective. It's that there's a massive power demand, and there's nobody questioning that with data centers to meet the
Mm.
AI infrastructure and needs. And so what happens is, as a developer, you're trying to think like, okay, here's a huge power demand. I can offset that with renewable energy. These
That
are new prospects. These are new developers. You know, they want to work with somebody who can offset the projects. And then on the other side, it's like if you're having a lot of trouble with community sentiment for the solar piece, if you're pushing in a data center, like NIMBYism is so big for data centers that like one thing that could be tried for developers in, their PR and communication strategy is like, okay, let's talk about like this massive power demand that's going to affect, local infrastructure and grid capacity in your community. Like we can help offset that. And so that's where I see like the biggest opportunity in messaging for developers in AI in particular.
Yeah, I'm in Indiana and they wanted to put a data center near me and people lost their mind. But
Yep.
and for me, it's near a bunch of farmland pretty much. I'm like, this is the perfect marriage. But it's not just the energy that they were thinking of. They were thinking of water as well too, because they use a lot of water
Hmm.
when with these data centers. Now, if you were to explain to somebody, and this is going to be take your time with this one, the difference between sales and marketing, because a lot of people get it mixed up. What would that be?
When we think of sales, you usually think of cold calling or warm calling. And so cold calling is if you've never talked to the person ever and you reach out to them first time. Warm calling could be you've had a couple touch points with them. You think of emails that are like one to one. So if Emmitt was a prospect and I wanted to give marketing services to him, I might just reach out directly to him. Marketing is often like a back end support. So as I'm talking to Emmitt in my email or my cold calling, he's also on social media in his free time and he sees an ad from Marketergy and he's like, "Oh, this is interesting. I've just been talking to the guy who runs that place. Like maybe I should learn more." And so that's like high level where I see the differences. But the beauty is when you bring them together and you work in tandem with a strong sales team and a strong marketing team, because a lot of times there's notions that they clash. And
Yeah.
so what you often hear is like sales will say like these leads aren't coming through, they're not qualified. And then marketing will say like, well, have you been following up with the leads? Like, what was the last touch point? And it's this never ending cycle, right? And the really smart companies, they understand the friction, they bring it together and they say, okay, we're going to have some friction points, but we're going to do our best. We're going to meet ongoing with both sides. And when you think of the term full circle back to ABM, account-based marketing,
Hmm.
that's usually where it's the most successful, is because when you're targeting a list of developers as an EPC, you've got a list of accounts you're going after, and you're only going to send messaging and marketing to those accounts.
Yeah.
And then sales is only working those accounts. So if we've got 100 accounts we're going after, we know all the touch points. We can show that, okay, we haven't driven a lead yet from this utility scale developer out of Minnesota, but we do know that they've seen our ads and they've liked our page and they've done X, Y, and Z. We pass that to sales. Sales is usually really happy and they reciprocate that and they go after them. So what happens in an ABM strategy is it's a mix. Sometimes the first touch point is from sales and then marketing backs them up. And sometimes the first touch point is from marketing and then sales backs them up.
There's a great marketing campaign that I saw a couple of years ago because no one knew about this product. Nobody. And their marketing was so strong that it became a thing. And I'm talking about solar generators. And I've said this in a couple of other episodes. EcoFlow specifically, I had never heard of anything, but they made the sexiest things for ads. And I was like, what is this? What is this? I kept seeing it, being in the solar. I'm like, why don't I know about this?
Hmm.
And then I bought one and it seemed like then every that opened the door, their marketing campaign opened the door for an entire subsect of an industry to come into play. That's when I really started paying attention to marketing as a communication strategy. Um, with with marketing as a communication strategy, we are going through some economic changes in this country, and there are a lot of people who are like myself who are doing their own. There's a lot of the small businesses coming back.
Hmm.
What would you say to them um, thinking about marketing for their small business?
Yeah. When we think about that, it should be we use the term marketing, we use B2B and B2C. But the best thing I can describe it as is like practical marketing. So if you're trying to reach EPCs or engineers, and you're an OEM, you're providing services, like if you're a small shop and you're just getting a new product out versus somebody who's had an established OEM for years and is a multi-billion dollar company,
Yeah.
you want to focus on the stuff that's practical for you in that stage. So usually when somebody will come to me, like if they're a small shop and they need stuff that's more boots in the ground, it probably doesn't make sense to do like a large scale paid media budget yet. I mean, there's an
Yeah.
opportunity for it later down the line, but it's usually things like, okay, I'm going to do sales and outreach, but I just need like a more effective way to get to them. So I think this like LinkedIn company page follower token growth hack that I've talked about on the Clean Power Hour, but it just allows you to take your connections on your LinkedIn profile and you invite them to your company page. And so if you're trying to like have a feed of like just the right people, even if it's just like 100 followers, like as long as it's the right followers, that's
Yeah.
what really matters. I think people also get tripped up in these vanity metrics. They're like, okay, I'm a new business. I got to get 10,000 followers. It's like, let's slow down, just focus on the right people because things happen, Emmett, where you push content out and you're like, I don't know if it's working or not. And so this is where the small business marketing and sales needs to be really closely held together because I pushed out a video reel and I was like, I don't know if this really resonates with residential solar installers. I think
Yeah.
it does, but I didn't get really any engagement. And I was like, shoot, this didn't work. But then I hopped on a call with a prospect and they're like, I saw that and this is exactly what I was looking for. This is exactly what I needed. And so when we think about like how to benchmark both, it's like such a strong hybrid thing. And so if you're a small business, like the best advice I can give to full circle it is like do your outreach, find these like free growth hacks, whether it's on LinkedIn or another platform, invite people to your page or do other things that are low cost until you get enough traction.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we're in the technology business. Well, I'm in the technology business. Uh, should you put that at the forefront in your marketing campaign, or is there a different strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to clash too much, Emmett, here, but technology is super important. But when you think about at scale messaging, particularly in paid media, you usually want to leverage the things that resonate and are like the pain points and like the relief you provide. And so the technology like is kind of the payoff strategy. And so in my career, I've spent, and managed over $1 million targeting developers, EPCs, IPPs. And the thing that resonates the most is like just get straight to the issue. Talk about like their risk aversion, talk about their return on investment, talk about their assurance for their fears, talk about the things they care about, and then the sales, they get to bring in the people who are on the product and the tech side, engineers, and talk about, the more nuanced technology.
That's, that's one thing that keeps coming back to me is you're not selling a product, you're selling a solution.
Hmm.
What's the value proposition? And I think quite often uh, people can miss that, especially if they don't know their audience. And that comes from uh, specific kinds of thought leadership because it changes. Um, how does someone in the industry gain thought leadership moving through this space? Because it's changing by the moment.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer of like LinkedIn being a strong platform to build your personal brand, but I think where people don't realize a huge opportunity is this ad format called thought leader ads. And it came together 2 or 3 years ago, and it came to bridge the issue where when you run ads on pretty much any platform, you just see a company logo, right? And that's not
Yeah.
always the best experience, with the exception of creators. But I mean, they have their own business as well. But when you think about like trying to build trust in a niche community that is solar clean energy, it's that you want to be able to get your personal face in front of people. And
Right.
so the beauty in thought leader ads is like you take your LinkedIn profile, you take your three best performing organic posts that you published, and then you accelerate that through these thought leader ads, and you're reaching the right people. So when I think about thought leadership, yeah, you want to create the content. And, I don't want to talk too much about that because I think a lot of people talk about like content creation and like things you should post. And there's so much about that. And I feel like the actual distribution just gets a little bit minimized. And not
Right.
everyone talks about like, what does that look like when you quantify it? And so the beauty in these two is like when you take a thought leader ad, on average, you're paying like $1 to $2 for somebody to engage with your ad. But when you take the company ads, any other format out there essentially is usually like $7 to $10. So
Ooh.
if you're a company and you're saying like, okay, I'm an engineer firm and I gotta get my CEO to have more of a presence and be front of mind for some of these like key conversations for the sales team, that's a much better cost-effective strategy than $7 to $10 cost per click.
Yeah, because people identify with the overall when they're speaking to a very specific audience, they're like, oh, I identify with that too,
Yep.
which may bring you in. Let's go back. How did you get into the marketing side of things?
Yeah, I got into marketing just over 10 years ago now, and I started my career early in a marketing agency
Oh,
in my hometown. And so definitely had a strong sink or swim mentality, but I was fortunate enough to learn how to swim in that situation. And that was the first time I was exposed to like renewable energy,
mm,
working with a couple EPCs that were local to central Minnesota. And so ever since then, I was like slowly trying to get to climate tech, clean energy. And a couple years later, I finally did make the transition. And so I think one thing I really like about marketing is everyone needs it, first of all. It's an important skill, just like being able to sell, being able to present yourself, whether in a job interview or a business call. And it just gives you the tools to bridge something that you're passionate about, whether you're starting your own business or you want to work in climate tech. Um, you got the skills to pay the bills, but then you also get to work in something that you're passionate about.
awesome. So here's what everybody needs to know, whether you're a $1 billion company or whether you're $1,000 company. What are some of the concrete marketing tactics clean energy companies can use to gain traction for their business in their market or the greater market?
Yeah, one key thing is that looking at I'll start with the B2B side. Like looking at the B2B side, one key thing people don't realize is like when you say you want to target a list of EPCs or, asset owners, is that you really want to have a list and ensure you can actually reach them. And what people don't always realize is like you pay somebody a third party service, or you use a tool like Zoom Info or Seamless AI or some tool, and they extract a list of company names and company websites. And people are like, okay, that's enough. I'm going to run ads in LinkedIn now. And they plug it in. And they're like, I don't understand like why my ads are getting shown to, I don't know. This is an arbitrary example, but like Macy's. Like why is someone at Macy's see my ad, right? They're
Right.
confused. They got the list. Um, and so what I've learned in my career is like on average, the clean energy space only has about 60% match rate because you have so many names that have the word solar, that have the word watt, that have the word energy, that have the word sun in them, that
Yeah.
there's even like there could be five that are called, sun watt, experience or something like that. And one could be in the US and could be 5,000 employees, and the other could be in Pakistan with 2 employees. And so you don't want to waste your dollars if you're only US bound.
Yeah, I noticed that I was doing some research and I typed in these particular things and I was like, cool. I was like, wait a minute. Just looking at very similar names that appeared, and then I actually switched mine to US only, and it niched down to like five, where it
Yep.
was like a couple of hundred before. But understanding your market locally and globally and who you're targeting is a big thing. What about LinkedIn Sales Navigator? Is that a good tool for marketing at all?
Yeah, it's a great tool if you're looking to expand into new markets. So if you just need like a broader, like I could service anybody in renewable energy, and if you can go that broad, that could be a good path because it's allowing you to expand your list. But if you know for sure, like I only want to find CNI developers in the state of Illinois, like that's only going to be a couple hundred at max. And so that strategy looks very different. And it's like, if you want to reach those people, you probably don't need Sales Navigator at
Mm.
scale. And instead, you probably just need to either manually build your own list or get a service provider to do it for you or a tool and just use it for a month. Use like a tool like Apollo, Seamless AI, build the list, and then just kind of move on to your very niche strategy.
So, Jacob, where can everybody find your information
Yeah,
or
people
find?
can.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sure. Yeah, no worries. People can find me at Marketergy. That's Marketergy.agency. If you're struggling with the name, it's just the word marketing and energy. Put them together, you get Marketergy. Um, we provide a gambit of services for clean energy companies, both B2B and B2C if you're on the residential solar side as well. So if you're interested, you're ready to level up, that's something you could explore with us.
Thank you so much for being on the What's Up Solar Podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much, Evan. I appreciate you having me on the show.
All right. That's it for the What's Up Solar Podcast, where the future is bright, the knowledge is power. And if you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share the what. Catch the full video on YouTube, What's Up Solar Podcast. Follow us for more solar truths, solar tips, and tech talk. Until next time, stay charged, stay curious, and remember the sun never sends a bill. Till next time, peace.